What would you do if you came home from serving your country and found a whole new family living in your house, a house you never sold, a house your parents once called their legacy, and the people inside told you to leave because they bought it legally? This is the story of Marcus Hale. A quiet soldier who survived a year in the scorching deserts of Syria. He survived sandstorms, ambushes, long nights guarding his unit, but nothing prepared him for the fight waiting for him back in his small hometown of Riverbend, Texas, where trouble hides behind clean lawns and polite smiles. The moment Marcus stepped off the military transport bus, he imagined one thing: home, the warm fields, the little creek running past the barn, the pecan tree where he carved his initials as a boy, the porch his father built by hand. He pictured himself opening that old wooden door and feeling every heavy month overseas lift off his shoulders. But the home he pictured was no longer the one he found, and the truth behind it would tear an entire community apart. Marcus loaded his duffel into his old blue Tacoma and started the long drive west. The sky looked wide and endless, a reminder that he survived another year and made it back alive.
Oh, yes.
Every mile closer made his chest lighter until everything changed. In less than a heartbeat, when he turned down his gravel road, something felt wrong. A silver SUV sat in his driveway. A bright pink bicycle lay on the grass near the mailbox. Through the living room window, he saw curtains he had never seen before. Children's toys were scattered on his porch. His first reaction was confusion. He even checked his GPS despite knowing every inch of the road since he was 10. He could have driven it blindfolded, but the more he stared, the colder the feeling in his chest became. Someone was living in his home, someone who believed they had every right to be there. Marcus stepped out of his truck, boots crunching on gravel, uniforms still dusty from the flight, and he felt something he hadn't felt since patrol. Duty, a rising mixture of alertness and disbelief. A woman opened his front door. She had a little boy on her hip. Her eyes widened as she saw Marcus standing there in uniform. "Can I help you?" Her voice carried confusion with a touch of fear. Marcus kept his posture straight. "This is my house," he said it calmly. Not as a threat, just a fact. A truth he had believed every day of his life. The woman shifted the child on her hip. "No, we bought this house 6 months ago. Your homeowners association handled everything." Her words hit Marcus harder than any blast. Overseas homeowners association, the HOA. The same group that used to send him letters for things as small as a chipped fence board. The same group his father argued with more than once, led by a woman named Elaine Garver, a woman who treated their neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Marcus tried to explain, "I never sold this property. I was deployed. My payments were made before I left." "You have the wrong person," the woman backed up into the doorway. "Look, I am sorry, but everything we have says this place was legally foreclosed. If there is an issue, take it up with the HOI. Marcus walked back to his truck, his heartbeat heavy, hand shaking. He knew paperwork. He knew his responsibilities. He knew nothing had been late. He had prepared everything before he left, so no mistakes could happen. So how did he come home to nothing? Driving away felt like someone had ripped the ground out from under him. Memories flashed through his mind. His father teaching him how to fix a fence, his mother handing him lemonade after a long day in the field. Every memory connected to that land. Now stolen by signatures he never signed. He stopped at a gas station and sat for a long time trying to breathe, trying to make sense of it, but sense didn't matter, not when the truth felt like a betrayal. Marcus grabbed his phone and called someone he trusted, David Morales, a childhood friend and now a sheriff's deputy. David answered with pure shock in his voice. "Marcus, you back? I just heard your unit was rotating home. Man, that's incredible. Man, that's incredible." Marcus stared at the steering wheel. "I came home, but my house is gone." Silence. A deep silence, then David spoke low. "Say that again." "The HOA sold my house. There is a family in it. They said it was foreclosed." David told him to come to the station immediately. Bring whatever he had. Do not confront anyone further. This wasn't a mistake. This smelled like something bigger. Marcus drove into town. Every mile felt heavier. It was supposed to be the safest place in his world now. It held the biggest threat he'd ever faced. A quiet threat, the kind that steals from people who think they have no power. But Marcus wasn't powerless, and he wasn't leaving this fight because something deep in his gut told him this was not an isolated injustice. This was the beginning of something much darker. When he reached the station, David met him with a stack of questions and a grim expression. Marcus, this is bad, really bad. If what you're saying is true, your HOA president has been doing things like this for years, Marcus. Leaned forward. What things? David sighed. Look, Elaine Garver has influence. She plays by her own rules. People complain, then suddenly change their minds. Maybe they're scared, maybe they don't want trouble, but there have been whispers for a long time, Marcus. Felt a cold realization settle in his chest. She did this while I was overseas? While I was serving? She took advantage of it. David nodded. Then we make sure she answers for it, but Marcus had no idea how deep Elaine's operation went, or how many lives had been broken quietly behind closed doors. Marcus walked into the HOA office the next morning with the same steady posture he used overseas. He hadn't slept more than a few hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw someone else's child playing in his living room. The building sat between a bakery and an insurance office, small and ordinary. The kind of place people walked past without looking at twice. But inside those walls, someone had stolen his entire life with paperwork and signatures that didn't belong to him. He pushed the door open. The lobby was quiet. A young receptionist barely glanced up. He told her he needed to speak with the HOA president. She answered without looking away from her computer. She's in a meeting. It'll be a while. Marcus didn't move. Tell her Marcus Hale is here. Tell her it's about my home. The receptionist froze. She stared at him for the first time, eyes wide, almost frightened. Without a word, she stood and hurried down the hall. Moments later, Elaine Garver appeared at the doorway. Her hair was perfectly smoothed back, her suit sharp, her expression cold enough to drop the room's temperature. Marcus. She said his name like she'd been expecting him. I wondered when you'd show up. You sold my house, he said. She corrected him with a small, dismissive smile. The association sold it after you failed to address repeated violations and outstanding fees. The board followed the proper process. I was deployed. My payments were made before I left. You know that? Elaine folded her arms. Federal law requires service members to notify us of deployment dates. You didn't. The board acted within its rights. Marcus stepped closer. That's a lie and you know it. My notices were filed. My bills were current. You forged something. The receptionist shifted nervously behind the counter, but Elaine didn't blink. If you have concerns, speak with your lawyers. Raising your voice won't change the fact that you abandoned your responsibilities. Marcus turned and walked out.
Ow.
Before he lost his calm. Outside, the heat pressed down on him. His jaw ached from holding back the anger rising inside him. He had faced men with rifles pointed at him, yet this quiet corruption felt far worse. He called David the moment he reached his truck. She's lying to my face, Marcus said, and she's confident. Too confident, David sighed heavily. That's what scares me. People like her don't get bold unless they've gotten away with worse before. Come back to the station. I found something. When Marcus arrived, David had documents spread across his desk. County records, payment logs, property transfers. Some of the numbers didn't add up. The records said Marcus missed payments he hadn't missed. They showed violation fines for things that never happened. The dates didn't make sense either. One notice was supposedly posted on his door while he was already overseas. Marcus stared at it. Someone wanted my property. Someone made this happen on purpose. That's not the worst part, David said quietly. A few people in town reported strange things in the past year. Fees skyrocketing. Dues added out of nowhere. And every time someone pushed back, their complaints vanished. Vanished. How David didn't answer. He just looked at him with something close to pity. Marcus left the station, with his stomach knotted. The more he learned, the darker the truth seemed. He drove to his sister's house on the edge of town. Lena, older by 4 years, opened the door before he even knocked. She pulled him into a tight hug. She already knew something was wrong. She always did. They sat at her kitchen table. Marcus told her everything. The sale, the lies, the family in the house. Lena listened with her hands tightly wrapped around a mug of coffee. They took Dad's land, she said quietly. The land he protected his whole life. Over my dead body will they keep it. Marcus nodded. I'm getting it back. For him. For us. For everyone they've pushed around. He pulled out the folder he kept in his duffel bag. Every receipt. Every notice. Every bill paid before deployment. Lena spread them across the table. She had their father's same sharp eyes, the kind that spotted lies instantly. They didn't just target you, she said. They targeted the wrong soldier. But while Marcus and Lena began preparing for a fight, whispers started spreading through Riverbend. Not about Marcus, about the HOA, about Elaine, about property owners who had lost their homes under suspicious circumstances. At first it was small talk in diners, then at barbershops, then at church gatherings. People spoke in quiet voices, scared to be overheard. Some said the HOA fined them non-stop until they couldn't keep up. Some said their bills doubled overnight. Some said they felt pressured to sell, and one word kept surfacing: foreclosure. Marcus knew this wasn't a single mistake. This was a pattern, a plan, a system designed to squeeze people until they broke. 2 days later, he walked into the military legal assistance office at Fort Timber. It was filled with soldiers and attorneys moving between desks and filing cabinets. A captain in uniform introduced herself as Captain Jordan Price. She had a calm, controlled voice and eyes that seemed to see straight through everything. Marcus explained everything. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she pushed his folder toward herself. You kept excellent records, she said. That helps. And yes, what happened to you falls under federal protection. If they foreclosed on your property while you were deployed, it's illegal. So I'm covered legally, yes. But cases like this can get complicated. People in powerful positions believe they can get away with anything. They don't expect a soldier to return ready to challenge them. I want more than my house back, Marcus said. I want accountability. They did this to others too. Her expression hardened. Then we find the truth and expose it. That night, in a small motel room off Highway 27, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. The fan spun slowly above him. Thoughts kept circling. The woman answering his front door, Elaine's cold smile, the fake violations, the lies buried in paperwork. He had fought for his country now. He would fight for his homeland, the deeper he went. The clearer it became that this wasn't just about one ranch, this was about a web of greed woven across Riverbend, a web that was about to be torn apart. Marcus woke early the next morning with a tight feeling in his chest. It wasn't fear. It was the sense that something bigger was beginning to move, something he had already stepped into and couldn't walk away from. When his phone rang, he expected David. Instead, it was an unfamiliar number. A shaky voice introduced herself as Ruth Turner. I heard what happened to you, she said. They took my house too. Please, will you talk to my Marcus? Agreed and met her at a diner on the edge of town. The place smelled of coffee and buttered toast, the kind of scent that usually calms people. But Ruth looked anything but calm. She looked worn down, like someone carrying years of quiet hurt. She told him she had lived in her home for 15 years. She always paid her dues on time. Out of nowhere, the HOA claimed she owed thousands in late fees. She tried to fight. They pushed harder. Then the foreclosure notice came. I knew it wasn't right, she whispered, hands trembling around her cup. But I had no money for lawyers. They said if I didn't cooperate, I'd be drowning in legal costs. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I signed the papers and left. Marcus listened carefully. Every word she said echoed his own nightmare. But the way she said it carried something else. Fear. Not the kind that comes from losing a home. Something deeper. He leaned forward. Ruth, what else are you scared of? Her eyes flicked toward the window. The parking lot outside was quiet. Still, she lowered her voice. People who speak up get trouble. Cars scratched. Letters slipped into mailboxes. Calls in the middle of the night. They tell you to stop asking questions. I don't want that happening again. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. Who would go that far for a homeowners association? Everything pointed to one answer. The HOA wasn't just bending rules, it was enforcing control. Ruth reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were letters, notices, and a bill summary showing late fees on dates she swore she had already paid. Marcus looked at the documents and felt something click. The pattern wasn't subtle. It was calculated. Before he could say more, she whispered one final thing. There are more of us. People are scared to talk, but they'll talk to you. Marcus left the diner with a cold anger resting in his stomach. He called David as soon as he got into his truck. She's not the only one, Marcus said. This is bigger than we thought. David let out a breath. I figured as much. I got 2 more names this morning. One of them says his house was foreclosed 4 months ago. Same story. Fees went up out of nowhere. Set up meetings, Marcus said. I'll talk to all of them. That afternoon, he sat across from Mr. Carson, a retired welder with a slow voice and sad eyes. Carson told him how his HOA fees suddenly doubled. When he asked why, Elaine sent him a warning letter. When he asked again, a violation notice appeared for repairs he never requested. He ignored it because nothing was broken. Then came the foreclosure notice. Carson wiped his face with his sleeve. I couldn't keep up with the pressure. I thought it was my fault. I thought I messed something up. It wasn't your fault, Marcus said. They wanted your property. They made you think it was about rules. Later that evening, Marcus visited Jan and Bobby Gibson, an older couple living in a cramped rental they hated. Jan spoke softly, as if afraid the walls might hear her. She said the HOA accused them of keeping their lawn uncut, even though Bobby mowed it twice a week. They were cited 3 times. Then fined, then threatened. And one day, months later, their house was gone. We didn't understand any of it, Jan whispered. It felt like we were drowning. We thought maybe we did something wrong, but no one would listen. Marcus felt something harden inside him. These people weren't losing homes because of mistakes or negligence. They were being targeted, isolated, silenced. When he left their apartment, he sat in his truck and let the weight settle. He thought of the way Elaine looked at him yesterday, calm, unbothered, confident. She acted like she held every card in the deck, but she didn't. Expect him to gather the people she had pushed. Aside, Marcus dialed David once again. Get me every name you can. Anyone who lost their house. Anyone who complained. Anyone who felt something was off. David said he would start digging. But before he hung up, he added something else. Marcus, I got a weird call. Someone told me to tell you to back off. No name. No number traced. Marcus stared through the windshield at the empty parking lot. That's not going to happen. That night he returned to Lena's house. She had dinner ready, but the look on her face changed when she saw his expression. What now? She asked. People are coming forward. Not just one. Not 2. A lot. And someone's trying to scare us off. Lena pulled out a chair. Sit down, eat, then we figure out what comes. Next, Marcus sat, but couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching all of this from the shadows. Someone who had controlled this town for years. Someone who thought they could bury every family under paperwork and fear. But every new story made him stronger. Every victim made him more determined. Every lie pushed him closer to the truth. He understood something now. This wasn't about money. This was about power. And Elaine Garver had been holding power for too long as Marcus prepared for his next move. Elaine sat in her own living room sipping wine, unaware that the walls around her carefully built world were finally starting to bend, but she would learn soon. The soldier she expected to break came home ready to fight. The next morning brought a different kind of pressure. Marcus woke to the sound of his phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, unknown numbers. He ignored all of them, except one. It was from David. We need to meet now. Marcus drove straight to the station. When he walked in, David closed his office door behind him. His face carried the strain of someone holding a truth too heavy to keep quiet. Someone on the HOA. Board reached out to me last night, David said. Whispered, nervous. Wanted protection. Who David swallowed hard. Carl Hughes, treasurer of the HOA. He says he has information, but he's scared to hand it over without
knowing you're involved.
Marcus felt something shift inside him. A board member flipping meant everything was about to unravel. Where is he? He's waiting in the parking lot behind the station. Says he can't be seen in here. Marcus walked outside. A man in his 50s sat inside a faded sedan with shaking hands and eyes that kept watching every passing car. When he saw Marcus, he stepped out fast, like someone running out of courage. "Are you the soldier, Hale?" His voice cracked. "Yes." "What do you want to tell me, Carl?" He looked around as if the trees might be listening. His breathing was shallow. His words came out in pieces. "This wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't know she'd target you. She told us you abandoned the property. She said the board had full authority." Marcus kept his voice steady. "What authority?" Carl rubbed his forehead. "The one she made up. The one she used to keep everyone in line. She controlled all the paperwork. She wrote the fines herself. She inflated dues. She told us to sign foreclosure approvals because the accounts were delinquent, but they weren't." Delinquent. Carl nodded slowly. "I know, I found payment receipts filed in the wrong folders. Notices that were never mailed. Violation reports with no dates. She changed everything so it looked right on paper." Marcus stared at him. "How many families did she take from?" Carl exhaled shakily. "More than a dozen. Maybe more. She said she was saving the neighborhood. Said she was protecting property values. Said we needed fresh owners with money. I believed her. God help me. I believed her." Marcus felt the anger rise again, but he kept it controlled. This wasn't the man he needed to destroy. This was the man he needed to expose the truth. "Do you have proof?" Carl reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. Then a folder. Then another. His hands trembled like someone handing over their confession before the world. "Ended. Everything is here. Emails, instructions, fake ledgers. She told us to push out older residents. People living alone. People deployed. Families behind on medical bills. Anyone who couldn't fight back." Marcus took the files and felt the weight of every person Elaine had crushed. He saw Ruth's trembling hands, Jan and Bobby's quiet pain, Carson blaming himself. All of them blamed themselves because Elaine made them believe they were the problem. Not anymore. Marcus nodded once. "Thank you for coming forward. You're doing the right thing." Carl's eyes welled with relief. "I just want this to stop." Later that afternoon, Marcus sat in the legal office at Fort Timber with Captain Jordan Price. She scanned the documents, and her expression shifted from calm professionalism to something much sharper. "This is worse than we imagined," she said. "This isn't just harassment or negligence. This is intentional fraud, property theft, coordinated manipulation of financial documents. If this holds up in federal review, she could face serious charges." Marcus leaned forward. "What happens now?" Price tapped one of the pages. "Now it becomes bigger than the HOA, bigger than Riverbend. This moves into federal jurisdiction. And once investigators see this pattern, they won't stay quiet." That evening, as the sun lowered over the fields, Marcus sat on Lena's porch reviewing the documents. Lena sat beside him, silent at first, then finally speaking. "Dad always said a liar's biggest mistake is thinking their lies make them safe." Marcus nodded. She thought she was untouchable. "Not anymore," Lena said. But as Marcus prepared for what came next, something else was happening across town. Elaine sat at her dining table surrounded by papers that once gave her comfort. Now they felt like they were turning on her. Her phone buzzed with messages from board members. Some angry, some terrified, some refusing to answer at all. One message stood out. "Carl is missing. Haven't seen him since last night?" Elaine clenched her jaw. She had always kept control, always kept the board obedient. But cracks were forming. People were whispering. The town was stirring. And she knew exactly who was responsible. She poured herself a drink and stared out the window. Her reflection showed a woman who had ruled her neighborhood for nearly 20 years with precision and fear. But fear cuts two ways, and she was starting to feel it herself. She whispered to no one. He doesn't know who he's dealing with, but Marcus did know, and now he had proof, and with each passing hour, more people were finding the courage to come forward. The quiet war Elaine had waged for years was finally being dragged into the light, and the light was beginning to burn. Within 72 hours, everything changed. Riverbend woke up to the sight of unfamiliar cars rolling into town. Black sedans, unmarked SUVs, men and women in plain suits, stepping out with folders tucked under their arms. They didn't speak to local reporters. They didn't share their purpose. But everyone knew federal investigators had arrived. Marcus stood on the courthouse steps as two agents approached him. They introduced themselves and asked him to walk them through everything from the moment he returned home. Their questions were sharp and precise, their attention unwavering. When he handed them the folder Carl gave him, both agents exchanged a look so clear that Marcus felt something powerful shifting in his favor. One agent closed his notebook. "We'll need statements from all affected families, and we'll need Carl Hughes under protection. What he brought us changes the entire picture." Word spread faster than wildfire. Families who had stayed silent for months finally stepped forward. Some came with documents, some with stories, some only with fear written across their faces. But now that the government was involved, they felt safer than they ever had. Marcus sat with each of them, listening to every detail, every late fee that made no sense, every violation created out of thin air, every threat that pushed them closer to foreclosure. Each new story felt like another piece of a puzzle he already knew the shape of. And as the stories piled up, investigators built a case that stretched far beyond Riverbend. It reached into counties nearby, neighborhoods Marcus had never heard of, families he would never meet but who had suffered the same scheme. Elaine wasn't just greedy. She was running an organized pattern and calling it community management. A week later, the first hearing took place. The courthouse was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder in the hallways. Some came looking for justice. Others came out of fear of being dragged into it. But everyone was talking about the same thing. Marcus Hale versus the entire HOA machine that had taken homes for years. Elaine arrived with a team of attorneys, but she looked different now. The tight control on her expression had cracks. Her eyes darted through the room. Every whisper made her flinch. She was still trying to hold her head high, but the confidence she carried like armor was slipping. Marcus took his seat beside Captain Price. She had prepared stacks of documents, statements, and evidence. The moment the judge entered, the room fell silent. The hearing opened with the investigators presenting financial records. They demonstrated how dues were altered without cause, how ledgers were rewritten, how violation notices were fabricated. Page after page left the courtroom stunned. People who once believed they were at fault realized the truth in real time. Then came the witness testimonies. Ruth Turner spoke first. Her voice shook, but she forced every word out. She described the fear, the pressure, the threats. By the time she stepped down, she had tears on her cheeks. People in the crowd reached out to comfort her. Next came the Gibsons. Bobby's hands trembled as he read from a sheet of paper he'd written the night before. Jan couldn't speak without her voice cracking. But her presence alone was enough to make the room understand the damage done. Mr. Carson testified with the dignity of a man who lost everything but still stood tall. He explained how he thought he was alone in his struggle until Marcus showed him otherwise. Each story made Elaine sink lower in her seat. When Marcus took the stand, the room went quiet. He looked steady, but inside he felt the weight of every family who trusted him. He spoke plainly about deployment, about paying every bill, about coming home to find strangers living on the land he grew up on. He told the truth without anger or dramatics. The truth itself was strong enough. When the opposing attorney tried to paint him as forgetful or careless, Marcus responded with calm clarity. Nothing in his voice wavered. The judge noticed. The turning point came when the investigators presented the flash drive from Carl, emails with Elaine's signature, instructions to target homeowners who were easy to pressure, a spreadsheet detailing expected foreclosure profits, a message from Elaine herself telling the board to focus on service members, because long deployments made them unavailable and unprotected. A loud murmur rolled across the room. Elaine stood abruptly, shaking her head, insisting the emails were taken out of context. But her attorney pulled her back down, whispering frantically. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing. The judge ordered a recess, but everyone already knew the direction the case was heading. Outside, reporters swarmed Marcus. Microphones pushed toward him, asking if he expected to win, asking how it felt to be at the center of something so big, asking whether he believed the HOA leaders deserved prison. Marcus lifted a hand gently. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because people deserve to come home to what they built. They deserve to feel safe in the place they live. His voice carried across the crowd. People nodded. Veterans saluted. Strangers clapped. For the first time since all of this began, Marcus felt something like hope. The final hearing took place 2 days later. The judge's ruling came after reviewing every document, every testimony, every fraudulent record. His voice was stern, resolute, unmistakable. All foreclosures connected to Elaine Garver and the HOA board are nullified. All properties will be restored to their rightful owners. Furthermore, evidence of fraud and conspiracy is being referred to federal prosecutors for criminal charges. The room erupted. Tears, embraces, relief washing over people who had lost so much. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. His home was his again. His father's land remained in the family. The people who suffered with him were finally getting justice. When he stepped outside the courthouse, people waited for him. Not as a hero, but as someone who refused to stay silent. Lena stood near the steps, wiping her eyes with a smile she had held in her heart for months. You brought our home back, she said. Dad would be proud. Marcus didn't answer at first. He looked at the sky above Riverbend. For the first time since returning from deployment, he felt something settle inside him. Something quiet and steady. Not peace purpose. The next weeks were filled with repairs, rebuilding, and restoration. Federal charges were filed. Some board members confessed. Some tried to negotiate. Elaine refused to speak, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth had already spoken for her. Families returned to the houses they thought they had lost forever. Kids ran across yards they once watched from afar. People waved to Marcus when he passed by, some stopping him just to say thank you. He never got used to it, but he always answered with a simple nod. One evening, as the sun set across his land, Marcus sat on the porch his father built. The fields were quiet. The air warm. Every tree felt familiar again. Every breeze felt like home. His phone buzzed with a message from another soldier in another town facing a similar threat. Can you help me? They're trying to take my place while I'm deployed. Marcus read the message. He didn't hesitate. He typed back, You're not alone. I'll stand with you. Because he knew now that justice didn't stop with one home. It didn't stop with one town. It spread wherever someone strong enough carried it forward, and Marcus Hale was ready to carry it as far as he needed.